It's the next step in the road to the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy. The Air Force Academy Falcons take on the Black Knights of West Point. And full disclosure again, I'm sure you can see what I'm wearing here. Yes, I graduated from the Air Force Academy, but that's about as partisan as it's going to get because numbers don't lie. So maybe I should reintroduce just in a nonpartisan way. The Air Force Academy Falcons take on the U.S. Military Academy's Black Knights. All right, let's get into the numbers here. First, we'll take a look at the schedules. There are no common opponents here, at least not until Army plays Navy in their last game, and the Air Force Academy faithful are hoping that game is going to be meaningless other than the national rivalry there. No common opponents. You see that Air Force is 8-0 entering this game. Army is 2-6. Let's start with passing, and that's something that neither team has gilded themselves in much glory with. Total offense ranking, Air Force is 69, and that kind of hides the fact that we're going to see their number one in rushing. Total offense ranking for Army is a bit lower at 109, and in case you're wondering, there are 130 teams that the NCAA tracks these statistics on. Third down efficiency is decent for both teams, 52% for Air Force. They did lead the nation a week or two ago, but not anymore. They're still pretty far up there. For third down efficiency, it's 42% for the Black Knights. That is not the entire story because with both teams, there tends to be 4 downs. Air Force is 11-14. 14 is a lot of attempts for fourth down efficiency, making them 79%. Army, 26 attempts. They're tied for third in the nation in fourth down attempts. They've made 16 of them, 62% total. Fourth down for them is a good punt. Passing ranking. Both teams, as I said, have not reaped laurels in passing. Air Force is last in the nation in passing, but then that hides another statistic that we'll get to in a second. Army is 126th in the nation, and that ranking does not hide very many laurels beneath it. Attempts per game, Air Force is at a solid 5 times heaving the ball. Army tries to throw it, though, 17 times, so that's a lot for a team that's ranked number 126. Yards per game in passing, Air Force only 81. Army a bit better at 132. And if you look at yards per attempt, that's the statistic hidden beneath the 5 passes. Air Force averages 16.25 yards. Army almost 8 yards per attempt. That's all passes, completions, incompletions, and total yardage taken into account there. When Air Force completes the ball, which they do 70% of the time, they average 23.25 yards in a completion, and Army's completion average is pretty decent too at 15.6 yards. Air Force has given up 0 interceptions this year. They're the only team in major college football that has 0 interceptions. Army has given up a fair amount. That's 10, given they only pass 17 times on average a game. To give up 10 interceptions is problematic for them. Air Force has given up their quarterback, sacrificed him on the altar of sack 5 times in 8 games, and Army 13 times, which again is a lot of sacks, although kind of in the middle if you rank them in the nation. And again, the efficiency we've discussed for Air Force is 70%. It's 51% for Army. So they're just as likely to throw an incompletion or possibly an interception as they are to complete the pass. When you get to rushing, both teams are primarily rushing teams. Air Force is ranked number 1 in the nation in rushing, with everybody else trailing pretty far behind. I think Liberty, of all schools, is number 2. Army ranks a decent 24th in the nation. Yards per game separates these teams, and you'll see the difference between a ranking of number 1 and a ranking of number 24, even though there are only 130 schools. Air Force averages 300 yards per game, whereas Army averages 190. Both are good in yards per attempt. 5.2 for the Air Force and almost 4.1 yards for the Army. So they both gain decent yardage with each attempt. The Air Force has fumbled the ball 5 times, Army 10, which again is a lot for a rushing team. The fumble rate for Air Force is 1 per 92 touches, in other words, less than 1 per game. And they did have 2 games, I think, where they fumbled twice in a single game, so that kind of jaded the statistics just a little bit. The fumble rate for Army, though, is 1 every 37 times they touch the ball. Switching over to defense, Air Force is nationally ranked 3rd in total defense, Army 68. Yards against per game, Air Force gives up a mere 238 yards. The Black Knights are much more generous, giving up 408 yards per game to their opponents. The national ranking for pass defense for Air Force is 12. Army, it's a decent number 23. You can see the yards that they both give up per game, 172 for Air Force, 192 for Army. There's not as much bandwidth in passing rankings as there is in other rankings. Opponents' rush yards per game, Air Force is number 2 in the nation in keeping people from running, which may be problematic for a running team, especially both these teams know the offenses of the others because they pretty much run the same offense. Air Force gives up 63 yards per game. Army, they're ranked 116th in the nation in rush defense, giving up 186 yards per game. Air Force limits their opponents to 2 yards when they attempt to rush. Army gives up 5.04 yards every time the opponent tries to run the ball against them. In terms of points allowed per game, Air Force allows 13, which is, again, highly ranked, and Army 26. Special teams, I see no clear advantage for either team on kickoff returns or punt returns. Field goal percentage, very close to each other. They both have decent field goal kickers, and the average punt yards, again, are very, very close. If you look at the Power Index ranking, 45th for Air Force, 104th in the nation for Army, though I do think Army has played a few better teams, more powerful teams than Air Force has played. They lost to them. Air Force did play Wyoming, and they did quite well against them. The passer rating is the key statistic here. Air Force, that seldom passes, has a passer rating for their starting quarterback at 256, a fairly high passer rating. Army, 127, that's fairly low. If you look at the touchdown passes to interception ratio, Air Force has 6 touchdowns via the air with no interception. Army has an inverted statistic. They've also scored 6 touchdowns through the air, but have given up 10 interceptions. Records, it's a neutral site for both teams, so technically an away game, although the neutral site for Air Force is 58.5 miles from the dormitory at the Air Force Academy, so it's really kind of a home game for them. Air Force is 3-0 in away games, and Army is 1-3. Both of these teams tend to live at the foot of the cross, meaning they rarely break the football laws. Army is number 1 in the nation in fewest penalties. Air Force, number 2. They both average about 3 penalties per game. You can see the record there. Air Force, in terms of average time of possession, leads the nation with an average time of 34 minutes per game, and Army is at 31 minutes per game, which is still pretty high. It's up there. Both teams are greedy with the ball. They don't like to share, and that's had a significant impact on at least Air Force record. What are the key matchups? Obviously, it's the number 1 rushing offense against the 116th ranked rushing defense at Army. Like I said before, Army and Air Force run similar offenses, so I don't expect Air Force to run roughshod over the Army defense. In fact, the teams that have time to prepare for Air Force's rushing offense tend to do much better. They make the defense look good because the defense, like I said, is prepared. The number 3 total defense team, which is Air Force, against the 109th ranked total offense, which is Army. Definite advantage to Air Force. The number 126 pass offense, which is Army, versus the number 12 pass defense. And recall that Army gives up a lot of interceptions. I think ranked that high in pass defense, Air Force plays a lot of passing teams out in the West Coast. Definite advantage for Air Force. And I call it now the lightning bolt, which is the Air Force receiver all alone at an unexpected time. Unexpected for everyone in the stadium, everyone in the world except for the quarterback and the receiver, versus a pass defense, which is good, but not necessarily elite. Both teams have keys to victory. I respect the players on both teams. This is a family squabble, which those tend to be fairly rough. If you look at the players on both teams, they're mirror images of each other. The faces look the same, the names may be different. So I admire the players on Air Force. I do admire the players on the Army team. They're going to protect the nation in the future. For Air Force, the key to victory, Clockwork Blue, control the clock. They're number 1 in the nation at doing it. They need to continue. They need to plug the middle because Army runs an option type offense. And if you stop the middle, you stop the offense. Fill your quiver. In other words, test that Army pass defense with a couple of lightning bolt strikes and see what happens. And then run amok. Number 1 in the nation in rushing, enough said. For Army, the keys to victory are to plug the hole. You got to stop the Air Force dive up the middle. Everybody knows it. Customer service representatives for technology teams based in the Philippines know that if you don't stop the Air Force up the middle, that's the only thing you're going to see the entire game. Army needs to protect the ball. Hang on to it. Don't fumble it away. Don't throw interceptions. Throw the ball out of bounds. If you need to, hang on to the ball. And then they need to put on their Bermudas, meaning short passes. If they're going to pass, and they do a number of times during the game, throw it short and see if those short passes can turn into longer gains. An Army must win the turnover battle in order to have any chance at all in this game. Right now, they're -12 in turnover ratio, whereas Air Force is +4. And average isn't good enough in this game for Army. They're going to have to score more than 20 points to win this game. The Vegas line has Air Force up by 3 scores. The matchup predictor from ESPN gives Air Force an 88.2% chance of winning and Army an 11.8% chance. That means that roughly 17,500 simulations of their computer show Air Force winning, but Army has to take some solace in knowing that that computer also has them winning about 2,500 times in their simulations. Weather won't be a factor in this game. It's going to be a balmy 69 degrees, no humidity, little wind for the area, visibility absolutely clear. What's my prediction for this game? Air Force takes it 35-14. That's what the numbers say. And as I said, numbers are not partisan. Would I be shocked if Army outperformed and actually took this game? No, because I know the kinds of men who play for Army. I know the kinds of men who play for Air Force, and those are the kind of guys they are. When the going is tough, they give it their best effort, and they never give up. Neither team will give up until the final gun is sounded. I wish them both good luck and good health, praying that both teams get through this game healthy and without any injuries whatsoever. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing, even if you're an Army fan.